Hi everyone, today I'm going to talk about the cycle of depression. So whenever I see somebody for therapy and they come in with depression or some depressive symptoms, within the first session or two, I generally will evaluate what their level of physical activity is. I do this to see if this is a potential way of breaking into that cycle of depression. The cycle of depression looks something like this. A person has depression triggered, whether it's something in their environment, something that's going on within themselves, and as a result, motivation is zapped, energy becomes lower, and physical activity can then drop off. Not just physical activity, it can actually be all types of activity, whether it's social engagement, completing projects, doing things at work. As a result of this lowered energy and not completing activities, then negative thoughts and negative feelings can often follow. And because of the negative thoughts and the negative feelings, then the depression can deepen. As a result of the deepened depression, energy again lags, activities are not completed, and as you can see, this is a really vicious, non-stop cycle. So, physical activity can be a way of breaking into this cycle for a couple of reasons. The first would be just the common experience of if you're exercising, it can give you a sense of accomplishment, a sense of achievement, and also just knowing that you are doing something to care for your body. Another way that exercise can break into that cycle of depression is that it actually boosts the endorphins in your brain. Endorphins are a naturally occurring chemical, which is kind of like a feel-good, mood-enhancing chemical, and so physical activity can literally change your brain, which is pretty awesome, I think. So how well exercise will work for you will also depend on your level of depression. So some studies have shown that if you have a severe or long-standing chronic depression, then you may also need an antidepressant, but exercise can serve a very strong supporting role in helping you to break through that cycle. Ultimately though, if you are working out consistently, you're not over-exercising, you're keeping safe and proper form, exercise is most likely to help you to keep a stable mood. And in the least, it's going to help put, kind of stop it from spiraling even further down. And so you may not necessarily spiral up a ton, but you are doing something to keep your mood from dropping even lower, which is hugely important if you are struggling with these types of symptoms. So one common barrier that I often hear people talk about when it comes to physical activity and really any kind of activity is that they just don't feel the motivation to do it. So I just want to take this concept of motivation and turn it upside down, turn it on its head for a second. If you've ever experienced depression, you know that motivation is often nowhere to be found. And so what I say is, even if you're not motivated, do it again, keep doing it, and eventually the motivation will come. So if you're just sitting there waiting to feel like doing something, you could be sitting there forever. And so what you actually need to do is put the action ahead of the motivation. Many of us have already done this. We've all done things that we don't necessarily want to do and have no desire of doing it, but we do it anyway. And some of us have likely experienced where you go to do something and actually later you found it enjoyable even though you never even wanted to start in the first place. I do know that whenever you're struggling with depression and it's really weighing you down, it can be really, really hard to get started in the first place. And I often think that there's just this battle that can be raging in your head. On one side you have the intellectual brain, which is saying, you really need to do this, it'll feel better, you watched a YouTube video, and so you know that getting up and working out is going to be really good for you. And on the other hand, you can have maybe the more emotional, depressive brain, which is saying, yeah, but I really don't feel like doing it right now. I don't really think there's much of a point, and I don't think it's going to make much of a difference, and so I just really don't feel like it, and I'm going to stay here in bed. So to this, I don't really argue with those two sides of the brain or try to figure out which one is right and which one is wrong. That doesn't really matter to me. What I try to cue into is which thought is going to be the most helpful to me in that moment, which thought gets me closer to a healthier life, which thought gets me closer to health. And that is the thought that I tune into and I pay attention to. And sometimes that's just the boost that I need to get going whenever I'm really lacking the motivation to do it. I feel like I kind of opened a can of worms right there with that end piece about motivation and the mind and the two different sides. I will do a video later that goes a little bit deeper into self-talk and thoughts and all of those things, but I just thought that little piece might be potentially helpful for this video, so I went ahead and shared it anyway. I will have a future video though, just addressing again the thoughts, the self-talk. So I hope that this was informative for you, explaining the cycle of depression and just one really good way to break that cycle.